Y'all know what it is.
Hey everybody, what's up? And welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. Today's special guest is us. Me and Mike haven't had a minute to talk for a good long time. And we
probably been 7 or 8 months.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, since we had an opportunity to do like one of these little one-on-one conversations. So I think it'll be a great opportunity to catch up. There's been a lot going on. And so Mike, what's up?
Oh, just, wedding season is over. And so that was a nice long 12-week period of gigs and living out of a car and a friend's couch. So it's nice to be back. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but we continued with the podcast, and I was in different locations with blurred out screens all the time because I didn't want to, show off the house that I'm in that's not mine kind of thing. So I did the background.
Yeah, back and forth between whatever relative or whatever friend or whatever whomever is helping you out or giving you a stay for a minute.
Yeah, and I actually spent some time in Oregon with my sister, and that was pretty good to catch up with her. We haven't really spent a lot of time together since we were kids, really, and so it was nice to have an extended period with her and her kids as well. Nice to catch up with the nieces and nephews. I'm the uncle they see once a year, and they so it was nice to have an extended period and actually get to know them a little bit. So it was good.
No, that's awesome. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like my nieces and nephews are all getting older now, so I don't have as much of that. I mean, they still only see me once a year or two, a few times a year, but they're older, so they don't care. And so, but no, that's awesome that you got to spend some time with them. I mean, on our front, I mean, we had a fairly busy summer. We traveled a little bit, got to go to a few different places. Usually I think worked out that I was here when we were doing the show. So, or we were able to move the show around or whatever. So I don't think I had to call in very often, but yeah, I mean, it has been a hectic season. So I'm looking forward to things calming down. Kids are back in school now, and, winter is creeping in for us in Utah. And I've still got some winterization to do out in the yard. So there's like this pressing anxiety all the time.
Yeah, I last week I flushed out my sprinkler system, and come to find out we need to do deep watering on all the trees, so I had to turn it back on, and now I get to flush it out again. So
yeah, well, and like I'm in a pickle like that with our little trailer, our camp trailer, so because it needs to be winterized, and I had an appointment in August to take it in, but something came up and I canceled, but then I couldn't get back in until November. And so normally they do the winterization and all that kind of stuff. It's, part of the plan, that we purchased when we bought the trailer, but I'm afraid that it will be frozen by November. And so, it may not be, but I don't want to roll the dice on blowing up my trailer.
I think there's a way that you could do it yourself. I mean, you don't
it seems like
you're not talking sewer kind of stuff, are you?
No, it's more like I have to drain water out of all the pipes, all the pipes in there are plastic and stuff. So I just have to get all the water out of it. And then you basically pump in antifreeze.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I think maybe I can do it, but if anybody can screw it up, it'll be me.
Well, I would think as long as you can get the water out and not pump the stuff in. I don't know that I'd want to pump antifreeze into my water pipes.
Well, it's specific for this. It's like
okay.
So it's some kind of antifreeze for that. But it's like there's that. But the problem is, or the real problem is that we developed a little electrical problem on our last camp trip with it. And I've tried to fix it, and I've done everything I could do to try and fix it, and no dice. And so I need to have it looked at. And so, but because I can't get it to them till November, I don't know if they will. I mean, it might sit on their lot for weeks. These places are notorious for keeping your stuff forever. So I wouldn't be surprised if it sits down there forever. And so if it's winterized or not winterized and it goes all the way into like December or something, it will for sure freeze.
Well, it's on them then. You know what I mean?
Well, I'd like to think so. Yeah. So I imagine
they won't acknowledge, but yeah.
Should have been winterized. What's wrong with you? Yeah. So that's a big pain in the butt. We also this summer got the boys a one of these super fancy above ground pools. Ooh. And so we had that up for the summer, and as predicted, the kids used it like 4 times. And then, and now I've got to take it down. And so I finally got it drained and dried out and everything, but it's just a matter of, it's like putting away a tent, like, I've got to try and roll it up. And of course we didn't save the box. So now I need a bag or a box or a tote or something. And it's a pain in the butt, but those are the last 2 things I've got to handle for the winter.
Yeah, I my aunt has one of those, and her grandkids just love it. But it is a nightmare to store every year. So
That's a pain. Well, and the worst part is we had one of these when we lived in Idaho years ago, but we just left it with the homeowner because we didn't want to bother packing it up.
yeah, I
Just like, nah,
I
you,
have good memories of that pool.
yeah, that pool was great. So yeah, we actually used it, but of course we didn't have kids then, so it was us.
Yeah,
And so
it
we
was more for cocktails and hanging out.
yeah, it was perfect. That was a good place to hang. So, but yeah, we have done it again now, the kid version. But yeah, the kids are never out there; they're always doing anything else. So
Yeah. So, I had a friend reach out to me a few weeks ago at the towards the end of wedding season. He had a client that kind of was no bueno. I'm going to leave his company name out and his name out, but I'll read the message that he sent me here. It says, "Hey Mike, hope all is well. Looking for some pro DJ advice. I had a 7-hour wedding yesterday, a good 60-yard hike to the ceremony, providing the perfect sound and mics for the reception. I ended up DJing 4.5 hours for dancing and got done at 10:30, which I've never done. I guess he does like a 3-hour DJ session normally, but we went over and above. Had a bunch of compliments. Felt like I killed it. I didn't receive a tip. Would you say something? It just seems like the better job I do now, it goes unappreciated." And so that was his message to me. And I told him, I replied back, just a quick reply. Hey, I think we might talk about this, on our podcast. And when we do, I'll let you know about it. So here we go.
yeah,
And I had a few clients that were kind of similar to this year, and I had a few clients that, I had 3 $500 tips this summer. So it went both ways. I had both kinds of
well, I
clients.
think it's one of those things that it's a, obviously in the United States, we're sort of a tipping culture, right? I mean, people here tip, but I think sometimes we're not totally sure when and where, right? Sometimes I
Uh-huh.
think it's a factor of cheapness and other things like that. But I think a lot of times it's like, what is the social norm, right? And so it seems to me, and I mean, obviously I don't know, but I mean, it seems to me that like for a DJ, like I don't know that it would have been immediately obvious to me that I needed to tip a DJ. I
Right.
think, I mean, it makes sense to me now, and knowing you and stuff like that over the years, I mean, it makes sense. And obviously a little tip for like a great performance, I mean, it's sort of how we reward people in our
Hmm.
society. But I'm curious, if, in a situation like that, like he did great and everything. And so like the expectation was, I don't know what he charged, but okay, you charged me $3,000 to come to this wedding, is like, is that enough money for a job well done? Right. I mean, like,
Yeah.
should that be the supposition, is that you're going to do amazing?
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't, then, I'm going to complain and all that stuff. Otherwise, if you don't hear from me, then great. And so, yeah, so it is, I could see how it's kind of a fuzzy line, whether or not people would tip or not tip. So, I mean, obviously you have more experience. So what's your take?
So my reply to him was pretty much, uh, when I priced out a wedding, I price it out to make sure that my tips included. Like I don't try to lowball my clients because I know what I provide and I know what I'm worth. And if they want to tip me on top of what I charge, thank you. I appreciate it. You guys, like, especially when we get along and they're great clients, and it's really nice to get that thank you, whether it's $50, whether it's 500. That tip's great. But I don't go into a wedding and undercut myself. So my initial rate is enough to cover the 60-yard hike in for the ceremony and the, whatever extra crap I have to do.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. And that seems to me like the right approach, right? Make sure you're charging enough that you don't feel bad doing the project, and assume that, this is paying for a job well done. And if this is what I get paid, I'm stoked. Right.
yeah,
I'm happy about it. And then it's not incumbent on the person, or the person to understand that they need to tip a DJ. I mean, maybe this is the first wedding in their family, their daughter is getting married and they got married 40 years ago and didn't have a DJ or whatever, and so they don't understand like the social etiquette of having a DJ. Right. What do you
uh-huh.
think about like a tip jar or something like that? Like I know you do that in
That's
bars and things, but is that what
That's tacky.
goes to?
Not at a wedding. And another thing you don't do at a wedding, you don't put up a banner with your logo on it. Like when I first started, every gig I had a banner with my company logo and a phone number to call me. And it was the '90s, and I didn't like,
Seems like that might have been more cool back then. Like it was kind of
yeah,
cool you're bringing in a DJ, but like that DJ is somebody,
yeah.
right? So it's like, oh, I brought in somebody that's cool,
And
just because they
it
have a
was
sound.
actually like when I had my banners made, I had them with black light. They reflected black light really well, so I'd set a black light below it, and my logo was glowing. So I thought it was dope. I thought it was cool. But as someone that, like, if I hired someone to come to my wedding and they had a 4 foot by 6 foot banner on the table with their logo and it was glowing, and all of my photos I had this big DJ logo, and that's just not cool. So don't do that, and don't do
Yeah,
a
well, I
tip
think that
jar.
makes sense, but I think it also comes with the dollars, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
you're getting paid $250 to DJ a wedding, like, I mean, maybe self promotion's part of it, right? I mean, at least in my mind, if I'm trying to play through a scenario like that, I mean, like if I was paying a DJ and I was only giving him a couple $100 because it was kind of a budget wedding and he wanted to try to, promote himself a little bit. I mean, minimally, like business cards or whatever, I would have no problem with, and
Yeah.
even something like a banner, maybe, so long as it wasn't the star of our show, but I mean, if
So
they had a banner promoting their name or whatever, like maybe that wouldn't be that big a deal to me. But if I have a really expensive wedding and I'm the star of the show and things need to look sort of luxury, I guess, or need to look, of higher quality, and I'm
mhm.
paying more for the performance, then yeah, I think for some reason I would not want it at a higher level. I mean, unless
Well,
it
I mean, and this
outlet or
the
something.
level of weddings that I do, they're spending, minimum 50, $60,000 on their wedding, just because of, everything that's involved with the venue and with, tents, and they're spending a lot of money. And so I can't come in and be this cheesy guy, um, self-promoting myself. They already know who I am. They already know, like, if they, you know, most of my business is referrals as well, and most of them are people that have been to other weddings that I've been at. And so I I carry business cards. I don't even, actually, I don't even carry business cards anymore. I give them a sticker. But and it's got a link to my website, and then they can go and fill out my booking form from there. One
Yeah,
thing I
I
would,
mean that seems right though. I mean that it seems like the more you pay for stuff, the more it's about the person doing the paying, right? Where if it's more the DJ doing you a favor and doing it cheap, then I think I have less of a problem with that.
yeah. Um, Another thing I would say is try to vet your clients a little bit more. Um, I would say that the two, like, I had two weddings this past summer, and I'm not going to say names. I'm not going to, I'll get into a little of the details, but the two clients that I had problems with, and when I say problems, it it's not like, I didn't get what I needed from them or this or that, like, whatever. Both clients were the ones that were haggling with prices, and they were the ones that um, I almost had to sell them on why I was charging what I was doing, and they had to have like a call and this and that, and um, when so there's I think to avoid a bridezilla situation, you kind of almost have to gauge them out in advance and decide if it's even worth your time. And one of the clients I had this summer that really just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and the only reason I'm saying this is because, as someone that's hiring an entertainer or a vendor for a wedding, a like, even if it's like a caterer or a florist or a rental company, treat them with respect. They're not your servants. They're not taking this gig on to bend over backwards and get crap from you. Yes, it's your special day. Yes, you're the bride, and you want it a certain way, and that's understandable to an extent. But don't go to the wedding planner and give her a hard time over something very minute, um, or be too good to talk to on the day of your wedding. Don't send your bridesmaid up to deal with it. I mean, yeah, if it's like something that needs to be addressed and you're busy doing photos or something, that's totally fine. But don't be so self grandiose or self serving to the point where I'm this princess or I'm this king and groom that doesn't, I'm too good to talk to the low life vendors here. Don't
Right.
be that person. I had that happen twice this summer, and both of them were one of them had 180 songs on her playlist, and a lot of them were um, in a different language. So it was I can't remember the culture, but they're to the point where I can't even read the title because it's spelled in a different language.
Right.
And so I'm playing they're like the only way I can get these songs is off of the Spotify playlist that she has. So I hit play on the Spotify playlist and I'm beat matching by ear off my phone's playing and I have the record playing on another one and I'm literally blending the two songs and mixing out from my phone into the next song in Serato. And then once I get out, then I can go, and play two or three more songs on Serato, jump back to my iPhone and play the foreign music that is on her playlist. And so after most of those songs that were in a different language were 128, 130 beats a minute, and she only had 4 or 5 songs that were accessible in my Serato library at that beat per minute. And so after I had played 4 or 5 of those songs, I couldn't segue off. I couldn't come off of my iPhone into the next track easily with the songs that were on our playlist. So there were 3 times that I played a song that wasn't on her playlist, and just to get out of the song that's currently playing in a clean way. And on the second song that I played that wasn't on her 180 song playlist, she sent her bridesmaid up to me complaining that I'm not playing music off of her playlist. And that to me it irked me. I'm like, are you effing kidding me right now? Like, are you serious? I played one song that's on, and you have to understand that there's a flow. There's a reason for what I'm doing. Yes, I'm playing 99.9% of the songs I'm going to play. I'm going to try and play it off your playlist, but you need to be understandable and not be that bride. Okay. And that bride ended up like, I could see it the week before that she was going to be a pain to work with just via communication, and stuff like that. I could see all the red flags. So I knew going into it, it was going to be a little difficult, but day of, she made it very hard. She made it and then of course she didn't tip, which, I knew that wasn't gonna happen just from whatever. And I was very professional. I handled it right. But one thing she didn't know is every other bride this summer, I had bought a new light show while I was in Seattle, and I was doing it for everyone for free as a bonus of like, hey, here you go. Like, thanks for being a good client. Here's a really cool light show for your night. And this one was the last wedding of this season. She was a pain to work with, and I didn't want to spend the extra hour and a half setting it up. So I didn't. So she didn't get that out of me because I didn't want to go that extra mile to make it special and amazing for her because she was treating me like garbage. Yeah. And so the only reason I'm saying this right now is because as someone who's hiring a vendor, whether it's a DJ, whether it's a photographer, whether it's whatever, you got to treat them with respect. They're taking their time out and they're working very hard for you. Like I literally spent, how long it takes to go and find 180 tracks and try and download them on your computer so you have them, so you don't have to have that back and forth game with an iPhone and a computer. Yeah. It takes a lot of time. So
especially challenging in a foreign language and stuff like that. What if you grab the wrong song or you grab the wrong version of the song or whatever, because you can't read the characters they're using?
Yeah.
I could see a lot of problems there. So there's a ton of stuff in there that I think you have addressed a lot of it, but I think it all goes back to what you said initially, right? Is sort of knowing your value and knowing your price. And I think one aspect of it too, that I might just sort of add to it. I mean, obviously, we do different things, you and I, but we're basically still selling creativity, right? I mean,
yeah,
you do it through music, I do it through design or whatever, but we're still selling intangible things to people. Right. And so of course, you all know the experience of a good DJ versus a bad DJ. And so somebody might argue that it is tangible, but, in terms of selling the service, you're selling something and they have to trust you, right? They have to know it's going to be good. And that's done through reputation or referral or whatever. But to your point about being, extra cautious and vetting your clients. So either as a DJ or as a designer or anybody really in a service field, you've got to kind of be in a position where you're willing to say no to somebody too. because
Some,
I find that the ones that I should have said no to are always the ones like what you're describing, right?
yep,
They're the ones that are the most trouble. They haggle over the price and all that stuff. And I mean, all that just boils down to they don't trust you.
yeah,
Right. I mean, so, and if they don't trust you, then you're busy, like you said, trying to convince them or trying to, help them understand the value or whatever. Right. I mean, and in reality, as a professional, you should be allowed to set your price. And then if people are willing to pay it, cool. If they're not, fine, and let them
yeah.
go. But
And
sometimes we all get into pickles where, you got to take the work on or whatever. And it makes sense to take a project anyway. God knows I've done plenty of those, but they almost always work out just like what you're describing.
yeah, I've, you know, I've been lucky in the past few years where I've gotten to the point where I can kind of say no to people, and it's hard, saying no to a $3,000, $4,000 paycheck, but sometimes it's just not worth it. Sometimes it's, the headache isn't worth the reward. And I've gotten to the point now where I'll get an inbound lead, someone asking for rates, and I'll sell it, tell them my rates, and explain what I provide. I have kind of like a quick summary email that I put together that's pretty fast to edit for them. And if they don't respond, I don't hunt them down.
Yeah.
I'm not
I think
trying.
some of that comes with being a professional, right? I mean, you've been doing this a long time, so you've, I guess, developed that muscle that allows you to, go, okay, I can smell what this is. This is not going to be a good relationship, right? And I can kind of do the same, right? So like we had a client the other day that reached out and they're like, okay, we have a $500 budget, but we want the moon, right? We want everything.
Yeah.
And so I responded back. I was like, okay, well, I appreciate that you have a $500 budget and that's great. And that's enough for somebody. But for all the things you're asking, I can't afford to put somebody on it, you know? And so, and in that situation, I told them I was willing to try and connect them with somebody. I recommended some other outlets where they might be able to find somebody that was junior or maybe, really hungry and willing to help. But I mean, that's not going to be a good relationship. Now I went the extra mile on that, even though I can't serve you, I'm willing to offer you somebody else, but I don't know, maybe I'm making a problem for somebody else. So maybe it's not that good to pass.
Well, it might be a problem to someone else, but it also might be food on their table too. Right. So if you're, someone that's at that level, still early in the game, willing to do it for X amount of dollars less than what you're doing, they might need the gig. So it might be worth the effort to them. And it might not be they might be a great client. They might just not have the budget. And sometimes, you forward it on, and if they want to deal with it, it's on them. If anything, you tried to help them out, kind of thing.
Well, and often that's it, so just talking about getting into a vendor relationship, or, if you're going to try and outsource to somebody, I mean, recognize that, if you're going to somebody as a professional, right, you're saying, hey, you're a DJ that has some reputation. You've worked a bunch of these events. The wedding planner recommends you highly, all this stuff. Like, you're going to somebody with bona fides already, right? I mean, you're going to somebody that's already got a reputation. And that person is going to have a different set of sensibilities than somebody who's still trying to kind of make their bones, right? There's I think sort of, one of the people on the Eggs show was referring to this, and I've heard other people too, but somebody on our show referred to these as like your seasons, right? And that there are different seasons in your life. And so, and I can remember a time, and both you and I think that honestly, this is where we bonded so much early on when we were young guys we were the guys that do everything for free. Like, you're putting up concerts for free. I'm road managing for free. We're doing all these things and basically making, maybe you got a little scrap of money or something, but like nothing, right? Ostensibly nothing. And, and always going above and beyond. Right. I remember, the New Year's that we did down in Arizona, and you put up this whole trust system and all this stuff. And they might have kicked you some money, but like not enough for what you gave them.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Trust Show, right? Next Thursday, so the Thursday before Halloween, we do this open mic night every Thursday, and I love working the open mic night. I go and I volunteer for free every Thursday evening to get experience mixing audio, because that's one of those things that it's very hard, and to be able to do it right, it's repetitions, it's you just have to get the practice in to be able to get paid the big dollars when they come asking. So I do the reps working with the smaller artists at an open mic every Thursday, because the system's set up. I built it. I went into the venue and we did a permanent install in the venue. So I walk in with an iPad and I can mix the bands down. So it's real easy. not much skin off my back. I get a few beers out of the deal, and it it's a good way to communicate with the bands and so on and so forth. Last year I did a big light show for them for St. Patty's Day, and it was the biggest, coolest thing that they've ever seen. It was great. It was awesome. And this year, I'm for Halloween, um, I have finally invested in, and I got a big roof like I had down in Phoenix, and I haven't had a chance to set it up yet. I haven't had a chance to do anything with it. So for Halloween this year, I am setting up my light roof for free for this Thursday night open mic show. I'm leaving it set up for 3 days, and on Saturday we have a concert with one of the bands, and they're charging a cover, and they're going to kick me back a little bit of it. It won't even come close to what I spent to be able to get all the gear that I need to be able to do this roof for them. But what I've done is I've reached out to all the high schools in the area, and I said, hey, I'm going to have my light show set up. You guys can come by and check it out. I want to show you what I can do for your homecoming and your prom. So essentially for me, it's a win-win-win, because I'm getting to set up my gear and test it out for the first time instead of just doing it for no one. B, I'm getting to showcase it for all the different people in the area that I thought I could reach out to. And C, it's helping the venue out. The restaurant that's in the building is going to stay open. The bands get to look like rock stars. It's just a really good kind of win-win-win for everyone. Yeah. So that's an example of donate your time to help your business kind of thing. Just don't do it for free all the time. You just got to say, hey, here's the deal. This is a one-time thing to help me, to help you, so on and so forth.
Well, it's kind of like back to this concept of seasons, right? I mean, I feel like you're not always in a spring, summer, winter, or fall, right? There's multiple seasons happening at any given time, right? So like in your world, as you just described, like, I mean, you're in a like late season, like fall or winter as a DJ, as a professional DJ, right? You're very experienced. You've done a ton of gigs, like you developed yourself as a business person in that realm, and you know how to do stuff. But now you want some reputation in and around, audio engineering and doing recording sessions for musical groups and stuff like that. So you're kind of maybe in an early season of that, right? I mean, you've done versions of this for years, right? But I mean, like as a professional, maybe you're sort of in a late winter, early spring, kind of at the very beginning, spring to summer kind of phase of audio engineering, where at the same time you exist in this, late winter kind of version of DJing career. And then same thing, here developing your business as a DJ, you have the wherewithal and the equipment and all that stuff to donate this system. And so you're helping a lot of people who are in their early seasons by giving them something they can't afford and they couldn't actually pay for. But, the experience of being late season in your DJ career is telling you, well, hey, this is a good way to market what I've got. And I'm showing it to everybody, right? So I think that this concept of seasons for me has been really interesting one to explore lately, because I think it gives people latitude to be amateur at things. If you think about having sort of multiple seasons at a time, right? Like the idea isn't that you just started out young and naive and then you got better and better and better, then you die. Rather, it's you can start over anew all over, right? I mean, you can have, 100 seasons going at once if you needed to, but it's just, I think being able to look at it that way and sort of allow yourself to go back to amateurity, I guess, I don't know if that's a word, but going back to being an amateur at something, or starting over in a new skill or a trade or something like that, I think is really good, because I think it's easy for us to get trapped in the thing that we're good at, the thing that we've always done, and stay in that station, right? And never really wiggle from it or whatever. But I think the ability to look at it and renew it, even if, from a DJ perspective, I mean, you were doing these big sound systems that people couldn't afford like years ago. Like this was the whole philosophy around a lot of the concerts that you and I did as kids in Phoenix. The whole point was come play a show for us because you're going to look like a rock star, because we have the lights and we have the sound and we have all the stuff, and it's going to sound amazing and look amazing. And every other bar that you play is going to look like you play at a bar. So for us and for you and I, when we were doing all that, we were really able to leverage a lot of your equipment that you already had for doing weddings and things like that to make these guys look really good. And it built a lot of long lasting relationships with these bands, and it went a long way. Those shows had great reputations, and those shows had, all this like cachet that came with it, because they're so much better than, your run of the mill bar show. And I think so. It's funny because it's like history repeating itself, right? I mean, and you even did a stab of this in Pocatello a million years ago for you did another Halloween thing where you brought up kind of a whole roof system at Idaho State there, and it was kind of a another one of those, right? They couldn't afford it, but here, let me make it awesome anyway.
Well, that was more of I was working as a promoter, and I got the ticket sales on that, so I did all right. What do you think about charging different rates in different markets? So, and actually, I have a good example of this in two different scenarios. So, in Chelan, where I do a lot of my weddings, I had someone reach out. I was already in town. I had, I was there for wedding season. Someone reached out for like an off night to do a house party on the lake. They had a lake house and they wanted a DJ for a 40th birthday party. And my initial thought was, sweet, extra cash. I can charge, X amount less and just take on this off night. And then I started talking with the wedding planner and she was like, that's not fair. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I'm selling you at this rate for these clients. And if you go and do an off night for X amount less, you're devaluing your value to me. And it's not fair to other clients that have come this way. And come to find out, the person that was reaching out was someone that she tried to sell me on for a wedding. And so they were trying to get me for half price or whatever, anyways, without going the route through the venue. They wanted to have their party, but not at the venue. And so after talking with her, I emailed them back and said, hey, this is my normal rate. I'll give you a $500 discount because it's an off night. And it's still a lot more than I would normally have charged for like a house party or something of that caliber. But I didn't want to devalue myself in the market by saying, hey, yeah, I'll do it because it's a house party and it's not a wedding. I'll charge X amount of dollars less. And the same thing goes with proms, like this roof that I'm working on right now and trying to promote and sell to venues. I was talking with the guy that is at the Station Square here in Pocatello that we're doing the open mic night at. I was like, what do you think of like selling the venue plus my lighting for X amount of dollars? And he's like, they'll never pay it here. They won't pay it. And I'm like, well, I mean, like he gave me an example of like a wedding venue here in town that for, I think they charge three grand for the night for the venue. And then the DJ that usually works with them is a grand. I'm like, well, that's way under my budget. I would never even consider that. So I haven't even marketed in Pocatello. I haven't even marketed in this area because in the back of my head, they can't afford me, and I don't want to devalue myself for that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think I mean, like, I'm doing this for free, but I'm also trying to drum up business. So I don't want to come in and undervalue myself on this lighting initially. I want to charge a rate. And if they don't want to do it, that's fine. Like I can go and promote my own private events and sell tickets that way.
Yeah. So I've always sort of had the idea, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I think my concept has always been that you're sort of on this scale where you're ratcheting up, but to go backwards devalues your worth or where you landed. Right. Uh-huh. So there was a time, and for a long time, I was like $25 an hour, right? As a graphic designer, I was young. I was just trying to figure it out. Right. Well, then I got a job, and at my job, they were paying me more than that to do the same kind of work. Right. So then I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe my rate needs to go up. And then they, as a designer too, so there's these different books you can get and stuff that share like national averages on, freelance rates and things like that. Right. And I was like, golly, that seems like so much money, but like, maybe it'll pay, maybe I just won't have work or whatever. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about be willing to say no and knowing your value. Right. And so, and understand that, I mean, anything is worth whatever you charge for it if the value is there. Right. So, I mean, if I don't know, if it was going to cost me $200,000 to invest in something that I know is going to come back and be worth $1 million in 3 years, like it's a no brainer. How do I get the $200,000? Right. I mean, and there are very few guarantees in life, but like when Metallica is coming through Salt Lake or Metallica is coming through Los Angeles, they're not giving you a discount because they're in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Right? They know that they're still going to make whatever they're going to make. and they're setting the rate because they're confident in their ability to say, you know what, we're Metallica, man. People are going to come from far and wide. People pay whatever we charge. You know, it's whatever because we're Metallica, and not everybody's Metallica. But I think, you know, to that end, like, you know, you have a system that probably is more expensive than somebody in Pocatello would spend. But so if that's the problem, then how do you make it worth it? Right. Yeah. So, okay, so we're going to put up this light system, but we're also going to pair it with some talent that will draw enough people through your door that it works. Or, hey, you always charge a $5 cover. Tonight we're going to charge $8, and, you know, but we're doing so much more, right? It's a way bigger show. It's more whatever. And like, I don't know, it may not work in some markets, right? I mean, I'm a big part of why we stayed in Salt Lake after I got laid off from my agency job down here was that I could make more money as a graphic designer down here than I could in Pocatello.
Yep.
And I think for your average, and I will say that was just my perception, right? I mean, I don't really know that to be true. I never tried. I just assumed bigger market, I could make more money. But I think there is a part of that too, that, you know, to look at the opposite is a little bit of knowing your value too. Like if you go to a really big company, let's say I want to do work for Pepsi and I'm a $25 an hour graphic designer. Well, that communicates something to them, right? Mm-hmm. For right or for wrong, maybe I'm the best designer on the planet, but because I'm telling them I'm only $25, they're going, God, I don't know. Was this guy, how good could he be for $25? Right. And so they're instead going to go to Ogilvy or one of these huge global agencies, you know, and they're going to pay an effective rate of $200 or $300 an hour, and they're going to pay all this stuff. And the only difference is, I mean, they may have good talent and all that kind of stuff, but ostensibly, assuming I was the world's best designer at $25 an hour, I could now be the world's best designer at $300 an hour. And the difference is the clientele. So at, you know, $25 an hour, I'm getting the crappy jobs like we were talking about. I'm working with people who don't have any money or have to sort of question every decision they're making. So they're haggling and they're negotiating and they're doing all that stuff and basically trying to put me in a position where I'm second guessing my value to accommodate their budget, right? Or there's the other version where you charge more and by virtue of that, you seem more valuable. So people will give you more money. And so in the case of your situation, I mean, Chelan isn't a big town. And, you know, a lot of the places out there aren't that big, but like, because you're associated with this event planner and you're associated with a certain venue up there, like your value is X, right? Like it's worth this. This is what it costs to have a DJ at this venue. So then when they try and go around you and, you know, try and get you cheap at a bar, it's not relative to the size of the city, right? Rather, it's them trying to haggle down. In the same town, you were worth X number of thousands of dollars, and these guys now want to pay you, you know, half that. You know, but you're still in the same city or whatever. So it doesn't really have anything to do with the market. It has to do with the value they're putting on you as a performer. And in that situation, you know, I mean, obviously you had to be mindful of your relationship with your event planner and all that stuff. But by being willing to say no, you preserved your price.
Yeah.
Because if those people had bought you for half price, now they're going to go to their buddy and go, oh, we got this awesome DJ. He's only X number of dollars. He's half the price of what we would have paid over at the venue. You know, so you should hire him. Well, yeah, now you're getting more business, but you have to do 2 gigs for every one, you know? And so you're better off, you know, serving the wedding planner who can get you half as many gigs, you know, so you're not killing yourself. You're not overworked. You're not doing any of that, but you're making the same money. Right.
Well, and that was my thought after sitting and think about it. I was like, oh, cool. Quick gig, quick extra $1,500, whatever, you know, like, yeah, awesome. I wasn't expecting it. It's on an off night, big deal. And then I sat back and thought about it and I'm like, she's 100% right. Because if I devalue myself and charge less for this one gig and word gets out that I did it, it's not fair. It's not fair to the other clients.
I think for people who work in a service-based business, I mean, maybe I don't know if it's greed necessarily, but it's like, there's this implication that like, oh, this is money I can just grab, right? Like I'm a freelancer. Like I got to take on everything I can get, right? I'm a vacuum of whatever comes my way. I need to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that mentality is actually where the issue lies, right? Because when you sit and think about it, you go, okay, well, you know, it's not good from a brand perspective. And like in the DJ world, if I want Marshmello in Park City, he's going to charge me as much to play that show based on the economics of the show, right? Okay, we can only put 1,000 bodies in here. We can only do, you know, you can only make X amount of money, but I'm going to take, you know, as Marshmello, I'm going to take the money, you know. But if Marshmello is playing, you know, I don't know, to 10,000 people, well, you can ask a little more money, right? But some of it's tied to the economics of the thing. But he's not taking less money because of his personality. He's rather taking less money because of the economics, right? But his effective rate's probably pretty close to the same.
Well, and that was kind of my justification too, was like, okay, at a wedding I provide, I'm the MC, I provide the uplights, I provide all the like I'm running surround sound speakers around the venue so it doesn't have to be super loud to be able to hear in the back. There's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have brought to this house party, for example. So I could justify that, I am providing a different service. It's a lot more casual.
And there's probably some economics around that too, right? I mean, the fact that, to rent all that equipment from you would cost something too, on top of whatever your talent fee is, right?
Yeah. So, and so like there was, and I ended up, I emailed her back and I said, hey, this is my normal rate for weddings. And I took like $500-600 off when I sent her the quote. And you know what? I'm glad that I didn't give her a bigger price break, because I did, after she replied, I realized she was going to be the bridezilla, or the pain in the butt client that I didn't want to deal with, because she was price shopping to begin with. And when I found out that she had already gotten a quote for me and was trying to go around the wedding planner's, booking process to get me, then I realized, like, okay, she's not going to be worth the effort. But when she replied to the email that I sent her for the quote, when I emailed her initially, I was like, I don't think you're going to like this rate, but this is what I charge, X amount, yada, yada, yada. She replied back, no effing way. That's more than a surgeon makes. And I'm like, okay, you just degraded me on like a whole nother level. Like, who cares what a freaking surgeon makes? Whatever. It's
right. It has nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing to do. Try and get that surgeon on a pair of turntables and see how good the night goes. You know what I mean? Same kind of thing. And so it's just, I think it comes back to what started this whole thing off with this message I got asking about, well, they didn't tip me. Should I ask for a tip? And, it's just, you really got to vet your clients. You got to determine what your value is and go from there. Yeah. Here in Pocatello, like for this light show, and I'm having the high schools come out. I had one high school say, yeah, I'll be there. Just out of curiosity, what's a starting point for something like this? And when I replied, I'm like, obviously I'm going to be a lot higher than your local DJ here in town, because I provide a lot more.
DJ here provides.
Yes. And so I put that expectation out that it's going to be significantly higher than someone would normally charge. But I said, here's the deal. I'll work with you on the first one. Like we'll make some exceptions. We'll do whatever just to kind of get the first one out there and get your feet wet. What I found in the past is, after we do a show for you, for your school or whatever, there's a lot of hype around it, and all the students get really excited about it, and your attendance goes up, and you can sell more on your price ticket. So usually what happens is you'll get more people in attendance, which will cover my cost anyways. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that's right. And it really does just go back to your value in general, right? And understanding what you're worth and all that in a market. And so, back to this idea that, changing prices by market, there's probably a little bit of that just in, for your average person, your average service business, right? Maybe a call, like if you have to call a plumber and they're going to come to your house in Salt Lake, maybe it's $125. But if you call Jed down the street in a small town, it's $40 or something, right? And he probably feels horrible charging you $40. And so, but it's like, so it's ostensibly the same service, but priced to the market. And so maybe there is some of that, but I think, like, if you intend to be different or exceptional or whatever, then it's a game of, this is my price and this is how I justify it, either by reputation or whatever. And, and then it just kind of has to be what it is. Right. And so, like, if I'm in Pocatello, if I, relatively small market, if I could even get a Metallica there, there's still going to be whatever millions of dollars it costs to buy Metallica, right? It is going to be. And so, it's like, they're not going to give me a deal just because we're in a little town.
So like, for me, like, I can lower my rates a little here in Pocatello. And the reason I can lower my rates a little bit is because my rate for Chelan has travel expenses built in. It has, like, gas there and back. It has cost of a hotel, so on and so forth, that's built into the rate. Here in Pocatello, I'm here. If I can drive 10 minutes, set it up and still make a couple, whatever.
Well, and ultimately, as a freelancer or a professional, like, I mean, it's your prerogative to do what you want to do, right? I mean, if you feel like cutting somebody a break, that's your business. You can also push back and say, you know what, my rate is what my rate is, right? I mean, so it's up to you, what you want to do with it. So I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer in that sense. I mean, in the global sense, or if you're a big enough talent or whatever, right, you could do harm to your reputation. But even at that, I mean, you see these things all the time where, Johnny Depp will show up at a kid's hospital and dress up as Jack Sparrow. I don't know if he's doing it anymore, but he used to do that. And, it was kind of a common thing. Like he would show up every now and then at the children's hospital and run around and help the kids out,
You look,
but I mean,
look
Johnny
at,
Depp's making hundreds of millions of dollars, so it's like, is it devaluing him? I don't think so.
yeah, look at Diplo. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen him on Instagram just setting up in a park and playing, and all of a sudden there's 1,000 people in the park going crazy to Diplo.
Well, or
and
Dave Chappelle is a good example of that, right? Like after his like exodus where he fled to Africa for a little while, he came back and he was doing comedy on street corners and stuff, right? I mean, this is the same guy that'll sell, 100,000 seats in an arena, but he's, standing on a soapbox out here on the side of the street, I mean,
well,
but I don't think it made him cheaper, right? I mean, when the arena calls him up and says, well, hey, you were playing that street corner for free,
yeah.
I think he's able to say, well, that was my prerogative. I decided to do that,
Well, and then the same thing as far as like, you've hooked me up with logos for free in the past. I've done like, I'll give you stuff for your Halloween thing at your house for free. It's like friends help each other out. But also for me, like if I were to go and say to a venue in Seattle or Portland or wherever, like I charge $3,000 to DJ a wedding, so you got to pay me $3,000. They're gonna laugh in my face because they don't pay anyone that much, and if they do, it's a Diplo or someone like that coming through town. And so they have a budget that they pay their local DJs, and if I want to get in and play at this venue, I have to say yes to that budget, or else I don't get in and play at that venue. And for me, the way I look at that is venues like that are a lot of fun because everyone's having a good time. It's not a wedding. You can play whatever you want. You don't have to worry about restrictions, whatever. And it's paid practice. So like I have zero problems coming in and just bringing a laptop, setting it up and playing music for a few hours just to try new things out. It's like a comedian doing an open mic just to try stuff out. That's what I look at venues as.
I think for like live events, I mean, to your point about comedians and stuff like that, like I think there's a lot of times, there's economics around it, right? I mean, the club can only pay you $3,000 because they have to pay all the bar staff, they have to pay for the venue, they have to run the air conditioner, they have to buy new supplies, they have to, and include, hopefully if they're running a smart business, they're getting a little profit on there. And I mean, that's the whole point. And so, so there's some economics around it, right? Maybe they can save from other nights to spend more on a special night for a special something or whatever. But, for just you to come in on a Thursday night or whatever, I mean, yeah, of course they have limited budget, right? They're not going to be able to dump, big money into it. But if you were opening for Diplo and they had set aside $30,000 to pay Diplo and $5,000 to pay support, well, you get a little more money on that day, right? Yeah. So, I mean, but with live performance specifically, there's, economics around the price, right? I mean, if you can only charge $10 a ticket for 100 people in your venue, you can't buy a talent that's $1 million a day talent. You just do a league, play your place.
When we did the Jimmy Eat World and Paramore show, there was a fixed rate that a guarantee that was, I think it was like $80,000 for the guarantee for the band. And then it was a split after that. So like, I think the show generated 130 roughly out the door, but I still had to pay the venue and I, yada, yada, yada. I didn't walk away with more than like $5-6 out of that show. And they walked away with a big chunk of change, but for me it was worth it because it was the first rock show here in Southeast Idaho in a long time, and at least in Holt Arena. And
and if that's what you did for a living, right, if you did one of those a week, I mean, $5 to $6 a week for your salary for being a promoter for running concerts, totally worth it, right? I mean, it seems like you're giving up a lot of money, but there is no show if you don't pay for the talent.
Down in Phoenix, at the clubhouse, the deal was, I got the door, right? Any ticket sales were mine. And if we did over $2,000 at the bar, I didn't have to pay for the venue. So it was and the sound system was there. So all I did was I brought the lights, I did the promotion, and I kept the door. That was my pay. And so it's all, I guess what it comes down to is it all depends on the scenario and the situation, what you're willing to do, and so on and so forth. So it's
well, I think the way I like to think about it, and I've got to kind of wrap up here, so maybe this is something good to go out on, but it's, basically everybody brokers their own deal, right? And with every decision we make, there are consequences, good and bad, right? So you could say, well, $5,000 isn't enough for me to, walk away from a Paramore concert. You want to make more money. And there's things you could do to mitigate. You could charge more for tickets. You could figure out how to pay your vendors less. You could do whatever, but the cost of the band is the cost of the band. Like you're hiring the talent and it costs what it costs, but there's ways for you to mitigate what you get paid. So, but the fact of the matter is, if you don't think $5,000 is enough, then don't do the show. Yeah, walk away from it. Go do something else, right? I mean, so you hear a lot of stories about people, oh, well, my coworker's getting paid more than me, or, so and so. And there are certainly instances where something shitty is going on, right? Where somebody's being mistreated and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that those things don't exist, but I'm saying if you feel like you're being mistreated or stuff isn't going well, or you're not being paid what you're worth, like walk away. Go get another job. And maybe this doesn't work in a lot of places. I mean, if you live in a country where it's really hard to find gainful employment, maybe you can't just tell your boss to piss off. But, there's opportunity. And in a country like this one, you can make your own way. I mean, you and I are examples of that. I mean, we've had very untraditional working lives.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah. And so, if anybody can do it, if we can do it, anybody can. And so, but it takes effort and it takes all this stuff, but you also have to be willing to say no. I don't like the way you're treating me. You're not paying me enough. You're not doing whatever. And if they're not willing to acquiesce, or they don't care, or they're not treating you correctly, then find something else, or if you like how your business is going, then you can either fix it or you can get out of it. But it all boils down to, you have choice in the decision, whether, no matter what the situation you find yourself in, you always have choice, and you just have to decide. I mean, you may not like the outcome if you choose X over Y. It doesn't mean that the consequences have to be great, but at the same time, you can still choose, right? And you can almost always walk away from a situation. And as it pertains to business or money, I mean, if you don't like the way you're being treated, refund your money. You go to do your plumbing job, or your, whatever, you go to hang shingles at somebody's house and they treat you like garbage, refund their money and walk off.
Yeah.
Like, what, you don't need it, and I understand not everybody is going to be able to do that, or maybe they're in a situation where they have to do the money. But then you're making a choice too, right? You're saying, okay, well, I'm going to put up with this and eat crow because I need money.
Yep.
Now, I'm not happy about it. I don't like it, but I need their money, and they've given me their money. So I mean, so you can make the decisions, and obviously everybody's situation is different and everything. But I just like the idea that we all have choice around whatever we do, and that we need to own it and be confident to own it. And I think that sort of dovetails into everything we've been talking about this episode, which is knowing your value and being able to price, affordably, and, making sure that what you're getting paid for the work you're doing is worth it to you, whatever that is. Right. I mean, I charge a lot more for design now than a lot of people I know, or a lot of people I work with. And it doesn't make me better than them. Just I've set a different bar than they've set.
Yeah.
And so, and for me, I need X number of dollars to sort of satisfy just, bills for one, but also to feel like I'm getting paid enough to do this job. Somebody else may do it for less, right? And that's why I always joke that my biggest competition is always somebody's cousin. Ostensibly, they could go get what I do in a technical way for free, right? They could go to their cousin and say, hey, you have Photoshop. Will you do X, Y, and Z for me? It doesn't mean it'll be as good or whatever, but again, you have choice. You can buy the more expensive option. You can buy the Mercedes, or you can buy the Toyota Corolla. They're both going to get you to where you got to go, so you're putting value on other factors. And so it's up to you to sort of decide.
100%. Yeah. I wasn't expecting this conversation to take this turn, but I'm glad it did. I think we covered a lot of interesting ground.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, it's probably more useful for our audience than listening to what we're up to. Although that just means that we have to have another call where we can talk about what we're up to.
Yeah. I actually might have a new gig here in the next little bit, and you as well. So that might be something we have to talk about here.
Yeah. There's a little teaser. So maybe we'll talk about that. I'll let, at least on my end, well, probably on your end too, we'll let them develop a little bit, and maybe we'll have like something definite to say. So, but anyway, as you can see, my lights are dropping out one at a time. So I better go today. But thanks so much to everybody who listens to the show this week and every week. Obviously, I mean, we've been doing this more than 5.5 years now. We have 280 some shows out there at the time of taping this. I mean, like we've been blessed to have a amazing ride with a million great guests on our shows. And I encourage everybody to go back, find people that are talking about what you're interested in and listen to it. Maybe even listen to people that aren't talking about things you're interested in and see how those learnings, work for you. I mean, we talk to a lot of CEOs and startup founders and people like that. And these folks are dropping knowledge bombs all the time. But I will say, and maybe Mike can echo this, but I mean, like in our experience with all these interviews we've done and all these people from all these walks of life, like there are some common ground, even though they don't on their face look like they're the same thing. There's for sure a common ground between these things. And so I think it would behoove you to go back and just, listen to the back catalog, but, pick a show that you like, somebody you like to start with and give it a go.
Yep. And if you think you would be a value add to the show and want to be a guest, feel free to reach out. We have a contact form. And if you have someone that you think would be a good guest as well, or would like to hear, just let us know. We're always open to people who want to come on.
Yep. Love that. So cool. Well, thanks again, everybody, for enduring our conversation. I actually think this turned out to be pretty darn good. Mike, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
All right. And thanks again to everybody who listens to the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.